Let's turn our eyes on Doklam, India's Himalayan pressure point and the strategic logic behind Prime Minister Modi's Bhutan visit. Namaskar, you are watching The Globali with me, Mousumi. Doklam, a remote Himalayan plateau, barely 89 square kilometers in size, has emerged as one of the most valuable slices of real estate in South Asia's security landscape. Perched at the tri-junction of India, Bhutan and China, it is not merely a point on a map. It is a vantage point, a strategic high ground that can shift the balance of power in India's northeast. To understand why India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi did not defer his visit to Bhutan even after a shocking explosion rocked New Delhi on November 10th, one must first understand Doklam and its role as a geopolitical trigger point.
जुड़े हैं हमारा रिश्ता वैल्यूज का है, इमोशंस का है, पीस का है, प्रोग्रेस का है.
The stakes are this stark. Whoever controls Doklam can potentially influence the most fragile part of India's strategic geography, the Siliguri corridor. The Delhi blast, though serious, did not alter what Doklam represents. It is a long-term security crucible requiring constant safeguarding. That's why Prime Minister Modi's visit, though seemingly ill-timed, was firmly non-negotiable. Now the Siliguri corridor and India's soft underbelly, why it is called the chicken's neck. India's northeastern states from Arunachal Pradesh to Tripura are connected to the rest of the nation through a narrow stretch of land in West Bengal, the Siliguri corridor. Barely 20-25 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, this region is squeezed between Nepal on one side and Bangladesh on the other, with Bhutan to the north and China looming across the high ground beyond. If this corridor is compromised, whether in peacetime through diplomatic leverage or in wartime through military thrust, India risks being cut off from its own northeastern territory. It is not just a physical bottleneck, it is a strategic heartbeat. Nearly all of India's civilian and military supplies to the northeast pass through this narrow strip. That is why any move that shifts military advantage toward China in nearby territory like Doklam is treated with utmost urgency. China's strategic pressure on Bhutan must be understood. It's a proxy route to India's vulnerability. China doesn't share a direct border dispute with India at Doklam. Its claim is with Bhutan. But the real objective is far from hidden. By pushing Bhutan into border concessions at Doklam, China inches closer to altering the regional geometry. From Doklam's ridgelines, Chinese forces can gain surveillance and possible fire control advantages over the Siliguri corridor. This pressure comes through a calculated mix of diplomatic charm and veiled coercion. Beijing dangles investments and economic partnerships before Bhutan while quietly insisting it settle its boundary issues. If Bhutan were to give in and accept China's claim, it would change the entire balance of power in this sensitive region. For India, that's a red line. Doklam 2017 must be noted when India drew that line in the sand. In 2017, China began constructing a road on Doklam, advancing its position further south. Bhutan objected. India intervened. What followed was a 73-day standoff with Indian and Chinese troops eyeball to eyeball in some of the most rugged terrain on earth. The confrontation ended with a mutual disengagement, but the message was clear. For Bhutan, you are not alone. India will not let your strategic space shrink. For China, any change in status quo at Doklam will be met with firm and direct resistance. For India, Doklam is a part of national security, not just international diplomacy. This incident cemented Bhutan's security as an Indian priority and proved that protecting Doklam is not optional, it is central to India's territorial integrity. And Prime Minister Modi's Bhutan visit in the aftermath of the Delhi blast, why he had to go, the explosion in New Delhi on November 10th, sent shockwaves, no doubt, through the capital, but India's Prime Minister left for Bhutan the very next day. That decision raised eyebrows, but on strategic grounds, it makes perfect sense. Here's why the visit was non-negotiable. Clear signal to Beijing. Operationally, India needed to show that its strategic priorities cannot be derailed by internal unrest or terror threats. India will not bow down. If Prime Minister Modi had postponed the trip, China could have interpreted it as India's bandwidth thinning, a psychological win. By visiting Bhutan as planned, India sent an unmistakable message: our Himalayas are never left unattended, and reassuring Bhutan in the real time. Bhutan sits under immense pressure from China, and any delay or hesitation by India could weaken Thimphu's resolve. Prime Minister Modi's visit reassured Bhutan that India is fully aware and actively supportive in strategic, economic and political terms. During the visit, India announced further lines of credit and infrastructure partnerships that deepen bilateral ties. This is both carrot and shield. Now, preventing strategic drift is worth to be noted. The worst case scenario for India would be a gradual Bhutanese tilt toward China. The visit helped anchor the relationship when it was most needed. Diplomacy is not just about visits, it's about timing, and this timing was critical. But here we must ask, can India realistically defend the Siliguri corridor in the event of a multi-front conflict without heavily reducing its dependency on Bhutanese cooperation and trust? Does military preparedness alone suffice in a region where infrastructure and diplomatic relations might matter even more than troop positioning? Should India push more assertively for trilateral arrangements or demarcations at Doklam to prevent perpetual uncertainty? Could the future of South Asian security actually hinge on Bhutan's choices, a country with fewer than 1 million people? Doklam isn't just an issue, it's a warning. Doklam teaches us that in geopolitics, small things are never insignificant. A plateau the size of a village can decide the fate of millions. A narrow strip of land can dictate peace or vulnerability. A diplomatic visit occurring despite a domestic crisis can signal resolve or retreat. Prime Minister Modi's quick departure for Bhutan after the Delhi blast embodied a national security lesson every Indian policymaker understands. We cannot afford to lose the high ground at Doklam, not militarily, not diplomatically, not psychologically. New Delhi's security starts in Bhutan, and India's northeast depends on what happens on those remote mountain ridges. And in the end, Doklam is more than a plateau. It's a mirror reflecting India's capacity to learn from geography, to invest in alliances, and to stay vigilant in the shadow of a rising and assertive China. The next move must be calculated but firm, because the stakes, the land bridge to 7 states and the future of Himalayan stability could not be higher. For more updates and insights, keep watching The Global Eye.